there. This is Essay Review with Yuna Ham. We are going to look at an essay today, and she's going to help us find out how this essay scored on a rubric, what kind of skill sets it might have achieved, and how to make it better. All right, I'm going to share screen so we can all see the essay. All right, Yuna, tell me what you see here.
I think overall it has a good introduction into the essay. It has a good hook so that the audience can connect to the writing.
Okay, so let's start with that. What do you think is a good introduction? What makes it good? And how do you know who your audience is?
A good introduction, it has the concepts that you're going to introduce throughout your essay. So even though you don't explicitly mention those things, you could explain or define those terms that you might use throughout your essay. And something interesting, I guess, so that your readers would want to read more of your essay.
Okay, so what I'm reading here is when one searches up the top books to read in one's lifetime, To Kill a Mockingbird frequently pops up on websites such as Goodreads or news agencies like the Guardian's book review site. To commemorate the 50th anniversary of To Kill a Mockingbird, Nigerian Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie explores the greatness of the classic novel. She addresses her Guardian American subscribers who most likely pay to read her writing and give a deserving tribute to Harper Lee's work. What about that hook? What is the concept that you're introducing here? Or does it go longer in this essay?
I think that in this essay, the writer wants to point out how To Kill a Mockingbird is like a classic of all American literature. And because of this anniversary, the writer wants to point out how like this book has been loved throughout like so many different years. And even though people changed a lot, this book remained like a classic.
Okay. Okay, so we'll come back to the definition of classic later because we're introducing just that as a classic. Where do you in this essay see the thesis?
I think it's the last sentence in the paragraph, or the second to last, both of them, I guess.
Okay.
They're mostly descriptive.
Okay.
But the last phrase, it has a bit of an abstract or call to action.
Okay. Sure. So, and as we know, a thesis shouldn't be just any longer, just one sentence. Even if it's one sentence, a lot of times it's much clearer. We split that one sentence up into two ideas so we can understand it better. And you have here Adichie, this essay, I'm sorry, has here Adichie repeats parallel structure as well as provides vivid descriptions of her examples and comparisons in order to emphasize the beauty of To Kill a Mockingbird. I really like that because it has right there, it's analyzing for modes of delivery, right? How did she go about doing this? Adichie argues that this beauty comes from the clear wording but complex plot of the book, which allows readers to connect well. Adichie argues that this book motivates readers to expose the inequalities in society, whether due to race or class. And I think this essay definitely gets a 1, as you already said, on that thesis point, because it has both the call to action, it has that abstract purpose. And what I like that this writer did here, and I don't know that they will continue it, but just from looking at this thesis, they have set up in their own writing a mode, right? Which is they're comparing that complex plot with clear wording. I don't know that I would have used the word clear because that isn't always the dichotomy, because we have the but there, right? Clear and complex, but it could be complex, but also clear. So, but it functions just really well. And I like that. And so now this author of this essay is writing in a comparison mode, right? Okay, let's look at the first paragraph. And just based on this first paragraph, where in the second row would you say this essay falls? 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 in terms of commentary and evidence?
I think it has good evidence. The first one where it compares like different characters, that Adichie used in her piece.
Okay, I'm gonna just pull you back just a little bit. What do you think the claim of that first paragraph is?
Well, the beginning sentence, it talks about the realistic nature of a novel, but I don't think that really ties back to the thesis.
Okay, and the claim doesn't have to, but at the conclusion of the paragraph, that's what we're looking for. The claim is, we may or may not know how it ties to the thesis. Ideally, it's clear, but it doesn't have to be, right? It's part of that abstract. The realistic nature of the novel allows readers to connect. So for some reason now, this writer and this essay has chosen, this is the first piece of the puzzle we need to establish, that Adichie would like readers to prove that readers connect to the novel, right? And do I have annotation here? I do. And oh, here we go. Adichie. Okay, so if I look at, I'm sorry, this is such a terrible line, but Adichie motivates readers, right? And we come back just the sentence in front of that. Oh, I actually should not use annotate. I'm going to just use argues that, here we go. This beauty comes from clear wording, but complex, which allows readers to connect well. So that connection is there, that it's a simple paragraph hook, but I see it there, right? The connect. And then Adichie argues that the book motivates readers to expose. And so first you need a connection in order to motivate them to do that, right? And so I do see that claim connects, but we're going to see how this essay connects it. I'm going to have to figure out how to get rid of these annotations here, sorry. Okay, so the realistic nature allows readers to connect within the novel. So now I'm looking for, that's the claim. How does Adichie use language choices to do this, right? To do that to put in them. Continue with, what do you think about the evidence? I'm sorry, I had just interrupted you.
Well, I think she chose a piece of evidence that had a lot of comparison using that mode of development that she mentioned in her thesis. And I guess the evidence could be shortened down more.
Okay. So I'm looking at, this is the claim, the realistic nature allows the readers to connect, and the evidence is reminded me of the imagined version of myself. My brother, Oki, and her American town, Macomb, was similar to my town, Nasuka, in eastern Nigeria. What words in this evidence do you think could have been cut out, or what are the only words we need in order to show the realistic nature allows readers to connect?
Maybe cut out the imagined version of myself, since it's going more for the realistic parts.
Which word is realistic? Which word supports that this is the realistic?
I think when she mentions her brother and her town.
Okay, so she gives actual nonfiction places, right? And so does that allow readers to connect? And so she chose that. Let's go on with, how do you see that the essay comments in a way to connect this evidence to prove that claim?
Well, in this essay, the author writes how the comparison between her town, which is in Nigeria, and the town in the book, which is an American town, even though they seem very different, through Harper Lee's writing, she connects them together. And it shows that even the people who seem to have no relation at all to Kill a Mockingbird, they can somehow find some small bits that they can connect to with the novel.
Okay, so she runs a comparison between her town and actually the fictional town of Macomb, and that helps readers understand that there's a connection there. There's actually some basis for these fictional places. What is the second subclaim that is made in this paragraph? Or the second piece of evidence that would play into this claim, and how is it different than the first piece of evidence?
This author quotes how Scout is the lovable narrator, and then talks about her privilege of being white. And I think the subclaim is talking about how, like, even though Harper Lee has these accurate depictions of real life, she also puts in how this real life isn't always perfect.
Okay.
And so even though Scout could be like a really nice girl and everything, everyone has their flaws, and
Okay.
that reflects reality as well.
Okay, so that's another way that that connection is made. So what I see this essay saying, and this is what I see, okay, is that it does provide some evidence, but does that evidence adequately explain? Is it commented enough to explain the claim, and is it evenly commented about? So let's just look first. Do you think there's an even amount of commentary in this paragraph?
I think there could be more commentary after the evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking at a rubric, that brings it from a 4 automatically down to a 3, right? There probably could have been some more things said. Now, how would it have changed if we come back to the claim and you this you have here the realistic nature of the novel. TCAM allows readers to connect with the novel. All right. Would it be clear if this essay added in by comparing nonfiction situations with fiction situations? What do you think that would have made it clearer?
Yeah.
So when you put that in, so first you have now your claim, the abstract, right? And then you add in right away, how did it do that? Then you have a stronger claim to comment on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so once you have that, you can see that Adichie does this or that, right? Or she argues that she uses these words, or she uses this setting, right? And the comparison, she runs this kind of comparison. Okay, so that's the first paragraph. Let's look at the last few sentences here. Do you think that in the last few sentences, the conclusion of this paragraph, this writer or this essay ties it back into the main thesis?
Well, it definitely does mention inequalities, which the author mentioned in the thesis, but I think they could have extended it further to better emphasize their point. They kind of like abruptly ended it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's also where the line of reasoning is not going to be a 4, right? There's a lot written, but probably it could have been more concise. And once you have that really concise claim, you just keep going at it, right? Because the claim was in some ways a little general by not adding in that comparison detail, right? Okay, how about, let's see how much we have. Oh, am I on? No, I am on the right page. These inequalities. Okay, how do you see this next claim? What is the next claim, and how does it connect to the first claim?
It talks about the inequalities mentioned in the past sentence.
Okay.
And it talks about finding acceptance as normal way of life. So that goes and ties with the realistic nature of the novel that allows readers to connect better with the novel, I think.
Sure. Okay, so what we see here is it is a great paragraph hook. Now, if this essay had, after Adichie emphasizes that inequalities unfortunately exist in society, if they had just explained that out a little more in terms of the thesis and connected it better, then you have a stronger paragraph hook. Yeah. Right? We know what we're talking about in qualities. We're probably not going to have enough time to go through the rest of it, but what about this mention of William Faulkner? What do you think that is actually evidence for? He writes as though it were an inevitable occurrence, a foundation already laid by the heavens. What do you think about that? That evidence.
Well, it seems as if William Faulkner, he wasn't really going with the same idea as Harper Lee was with her novel.
Okay.
And the author of this essay wants to juxtapose his writing with Harper Lee's writing and the ideas that they're both going for.
Okay, so do you think she's maybe putting in like a rebuttal there, maybe, or another perspective?
Yeah. And
I think that's great. She's still going, because she is not analyzing To Kill a Mockingbird. She's putting out an argument about it, right? And she's saying, I get that, here's another perspective. And what about the commentary in this essay for that piece of evidence? And is that evidence just about right, or is it a little bit long or too short?
I think it's okay. I'm not sure, but I think in the analysis they talk about how it connects to the audience
Sure.
of the piece, and I think that kind of helps the commentary.
Okay.
The evidence.
Okay. If this were a standalone paragraph, how on the rubric would you score this paragraph, and how do you defend that?
Probably a 3. I don't know if it would be a 4. Part of it is because like the second quote that the author mentions,
Right.
I don't think she really analyzed it enough to tie back to her thesis or to her main claim.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it would be a 3.
I would agree. Because even if I just look at this visually in the essay, there's a quote here that best novels have something to say, right? And then it just goes right into the conclusion.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot with student essays and timed essays. There's just not enough time. And then so they drop it in and then they end. And then the conclusion is a very rushed, okay, my thesis was about this, which is actually okay for a timed write. Right. This is really a draft here. Let's talk about the conclusion just a little bit. To American readers of news articles, this one book review may not stay long on their minds, however, by exemplifying the realistic setting and characters of TCAM. Okay, so it starts out with identifying the audience, but the one book may not stay long. Do you feel like that is addressing an abstract or what the essay was trying to put out as the thesis?
For this one or Adichie's?
For this one.
Yeah, I think so, because American readers of like magazines or news articles, they probably go through so many different writings,
Correct.
like per week.
Uh-huh.
And just one review might not stay long on our
Okay.
minds, which is what they're saying.
Okay. And you come back in this essay to, we have here, Adichie argues that Lee's legacy and her books, legacy of an important book that tackles important issues as a must read. I would say that, you know, the Lee's legacy and her books, legacy of an important book. So this is where we come back to the idea of classics, right? What is a classic? What is important? And if we can narrow it down, then the argument is easier to push forward. Something that educates children, or something that educates high school kids. A classic should be something that is timeless in the sense that the lessons are applicable in any age. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because that word can be defined in a real broad term, and people might have different interpretations of it. I would agree that this is a 1-3-0. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
The next step you could do if you're online or if you're listening to this is go through and think, what kind of words could have been changed to, for example, classics or important.